Sit in a relaxed and upright, supported position. Allow your body to feel stable. And then allow your body to start to relax. Let go of the tension that might be in your arms or in your back or in your neck this morning, or even in your jaw. Just allow it to fade away. Just release that. And if it's comfortable for you, you can put your hands on your lap as you get relaxed. You might even allow your eyes to close, or maybe just close slightly so a little bit of light enters in. And just allow yourself to go inward to that heart space, inward to that place where we know the divine presence, that omnipresence that we call God, lives and moves and has its being. And I want you to focus on your breath for just a few moments, allowing yourself to feel this air entering your nostrils and going into your lungs, the breath of God, the breath of life, the creative energy that underlies all of creation. Today I'm going to take you through a series of I am affirmations, and I invite you to make them your own, to feel the truth of these statements. So I invite you to just envision yourself with the strength, stability, and fortitude of a mountain. Know for yourself, I am a presence of strength. I have the ability to persevere and be stable in all that I do. I possess stability in mind and body. Now I want you to envision that there's a still lake on the top of this mountain. And I want you to envision that you have the strength and depth and flexibility and tranquility of this still lake. I am a presence of wisdom and understanding. I have the ability to see with my higher consciousness and the ability to discern what is right for me. I possess perception in mind and body. Now I invite you to see a lotus flower coming up with its roots based in the mud of this lake. And it's coming up and it's blooming above the water. And I want you to envision that you have the gentleness, the conviction, and the openness of a lotus flower. I am a presence of love and faith. I have the ability to create harmony, be receptive to that inner guidance, and spiritually intuit. I possess enlightened compassion. On top of your mountain, there is a lake, and coming up from that lake, there is a lotus flower. And now I'm going to invite you to envision that you are a dragonfly or a butterfly or some sort of insect that is allowing yourself to dwell, to seek refuge in this lotus flower. Envision that you have the freedom, the energy, and the vitality of this insect. Or maybe even you decide to make yourself a hummingbird. I am the presence of liberation and release. I am the presence of liberation and release. I have the ability to let go of beliefs and ideas that no longer serve my spiritual growth. I possess discernment in mind and body. I flourish as I cultivate mindfulness. And I invite you to take a few more breaths as you rest in the stillness for just a few moments. Allowing whatever I am statements that are coming up from your heart center to take root in you. Know the truth of those statements as we enter the silence for just a few moments. And as you breathe in, know for yourself, I am a presence of strength. I am a presence of wisdom and understanding. I am a presence of love and faith. I am the presence of liberation and release. I am. Know the truth of that feeling just by thinking I am, the power of that. I invite you to take just a few more breaths this morning. Before you start to bring your awareness back to your body, back to the sensations of the body. And when you're ready, you're invited to maybe move fingers or toes, or stretch your neck, or roll your shoulders, and just allow that sensation to return slowly. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to this space. Good morning. Does that feel a little different now than it did just a few moments ago? I'd like to start today's message by sharing just two brief passages from the Gospel of Thomas. For those who have never heard of the Gospel of Thomas, this is an extra canonical gospel. It's a sayings gospel. It's one of the gospels that was found in the Nag Hammadi text. It's known as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So you won't find it in your traditional Bible, but it is a text that was practiced, at least by some Christians, after Jesus' death. And Jesus says, "He who seeks, let him not cease seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be troubled. And when he is troubled, he will be amazed, and he will reign over the all." And Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in heaven,' then the birds of heaven will go before you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will go before you. But the kingdom is within you, and it is outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will know that you are the sons of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you are in poverty, and you are poverty." Thought-provoking sayings. This idea of seeking, of curiosity, as Rose mentioned in the introduction for today's message, humankind is innately curious. We know this. We're curious about the nature of the universe. We're curious about the nature of ourselves. We're curious about how we relate to this divine presence that we call God. This curiosity led our ancient, and I mean ancient ancestors, from utilizing basic tools of sticks and stones to exploring the depths and furthest reaches of our planet and beyond. We have a rover called Curiosity on Mars. Now, in Gene Roddenberry's cult classic series Star Trek, which I'm a huge fan of, it is said that space is the final frontier. Yet, as Eric Butterworth and other spiritual teachers over the decades and centuries and even millennia have proclaimed, the mind, the consciousness, is indeed the final frontier. It's what we seek to explore and understand. And not only can you find this in the sayings of the Gospel of Thomas, you can also find this throughout the biblical tradition. You can also find this as the underlying underpinnings of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. Man is seeking to know himself. So I'm here today to talk about the power of the mind, the power of our consciousness. Now, the power of the mind, the power of the consciousness has given us all that we rely upon today. And I'm going to demonstrate this. Our ancestors learned not only how to forage, but how to then take those seeds and plant them and create farms and allow themselves to create villages and cities and civilizations. Our ancestors took what was their language and learned not only, hey, can I etch things on stone or in clay tablets or use pigment on walls? I can create symbols, and those symbols I can imbue with meaning. And now we have such crazy technology that our storytelling, our visualizations are on a television in everybody's home. We have movies, we have Broadway productions. Mankind learned how to harness fire, decided they wanted to be able to light homes, created lamps, figured out a way to create candles so that we could light our homes. And then man discovered how to harness electricity so that we could light and heat and cool our homes. There isn't a moment that goes by where our lives hasn't been impacted in some way by human consciousness, by human ingenuity, by human curiosity. And if you say you can't see it, well then, guess what? You're conscious. You can see it. Your own consciousness impacts how you view the world, impacts your moment-to-moment day, every day. Humankind has the ability, alas, the power to think and to imagine and thus to create. Yet, when it comes to utilizing this power for our everyday lives, we often falter to fear or other negative emotions or thoughts that prevent us from living from our full potential. And you'll notice I say from our full potential rather than to our full potential, because that potential already rests inside of you. As a man thinketh. We could title this As a Person Thinketh, if we wanted to. In this chapter of Reverend Eric Butterworth's seminal book, he explores this idea of consciousness, of thought, and the power of our thinking. He relays this idea that the power of our mind is ours to use. First, though, we have to accept that we have this power. We have to accept that thinking has a power, that thinking has a way of manifesting in the world. We have to accept and acknowledge the power of our thoughts. We have to accept and acknowledge that we, our minds, our consciousness, has the power to guide, change, and form our thinking. We have to believe in the power of our minds in order to make that change. Curiosity. This is one of the ideas prominent in unity. It's one of the ideas prominent that led me into looking into and following Buddhist tradition for so long. It's led me not only to look into unity's teachings at a deeper academic level, but to explore, to experience, and to live them because of this openness, because I can figure out what works for me, what works for where I am in this moment, and I can use it. So in explaining what is unity, Eric Butterworth states, quote, "We might say here that unity is an open door of self-discovery for those who are curious, who want to know more of the meaning of the world around and within them. Unity is a pathway to understanding for those who cannot accept final answers and precast spirituality, who feel the urge of curiosity." End quote. So I'd ask you to ask yourself, do you feel the urge of curiosity? Would you like to explore the inner reaches of your consciousness? Would you like to see what you are truly capable of? Would you like to use the power of your mind to transform your life? And if you said yes to any of this, I have another question. Are you willing to take on this powerful responsibility? Because it is indeed a responsibility. One of the things that Reverend Eric Butterworth lays out in this chapter is that unity's teachings are about acknowledging each person's responsibility for their own thinking. We alone are responsible for our thoughts. We alone are responsible for how we respond to these thoughts. We alone are responsible for how they make their way into our lives, into our spoken words, into our actions. According to Eric Butterworth, quote, "We all are constantly making ourselves what we are." I'm going to say that again. We all are constantly making ourselves what we are. He goes on to say that unity reveals that our lives and affairs are completely influenced and shaped by the character of our thinking. That a person is not limited by God's will or by heredity or environment or by fate or circumstance, but by his or her own dominant state of mind. That's quite the responsibility. So we might see how unity's pathway might be a little off-putting for those who maybe want to cling to certainty, or those who want to cling for an errant truth, or for those who want to cling to an avoidance of responsibility or even accountability. Yet to me, there is this vast, eye-opening, awe-inspiring power and energy in knowing that knowing that you, that we have the ability to shape, guide, and formulate our thoughts. Now, Butterworth lays out this concept eloquently in this chapter, and I'd like to share a passage with you. It's a little bit of a longer passage, so bear with me, but it has a lot of fruit. And this is on page 48 if people are wanting to follow in their books from home. All too many of us think that being possessed by any thought that chances to come along is unavoidable. It may be a matter of regret that we have been awake all night worrying about some problem in our lives, but we tell about it as if it were something over which we have no control. We have yet to discover that we have the power to determine whether or not we are going to be kept awake, whether or not we are going to worry. We may not realize it, but we worry because we make the decision that this is the way we determine to face our problem. Always there is a choice. He goes on to say, if a pebble in our shoe torments us, we stop in our tracks and do something about it. We take off the shoe and we shake it out. Once the matter is understood, it's just as easy to expel an intruding and obnoxious thought from the mind. And in your mind, you might say, if only it were that simple, right? It can be, and yet we allow ourselves to get so bogged down in these repetitive thought cycles that oftentimes we fail to recognize that we're worrying. We fail to recognize that we've made the decision to stay awake. We fail to recognize that we are creating our own torment. We fail to recognize that we are creating our own hell in our minds. Now, those who have embraced these teachings and been in unity for a little while are likely to attest that, yes, the process is just a little bit more complicated than getting a pebble out of your shoe. All right, sometimes it can feel like we are wearing ultra-thin flip-flops on a really long gravel road. And sometimes it feels like it's the exact same pebble that keeps getting in our shoe. We dump it out and it's in our pathway once more. And sometimes it can feel as if we're barefoot. So what's happening? Why does this stuff keep coming up? Well, science now tells us something that Eric Butterworth didn't have all the knowledge about what we have today about the brain. But science today tells us that our repetitive thoughts actually create connections in our brains, synaptic connections in our brains. And it's those connections that keep this cycle of repetitive thinking going and going and going. In addition, it appears that over time, deep evolutionary time, humankind has started to wire our brains a little bit more towards negativity than positivity. And while that probably had an evolutionary function in being aware that there were predators or being aware that there were dangers out there, it doesn't always serve us today to have that same kind of consciousness. And right now you might be thinking, well, it's hardwired. Why fight against it, right? This idea that we are biased a little bit more towards negativity is what the science of this of consciousness, the theorists that are seeing this in the research, they call this negativity bias. We're likely to remember and replay or relive negative experiences over positive ones. And if you don't believe me, at the end of the night before you go to bed, what are you more likely to remember? The compliment somebody gave you or the insult somebody gave you? But science also tells us that there are proven ways to start to rewire our brains. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not as easy as getting a pebble out of your shoe. But we do possess this power to challenge and to change our thoughts. And if you're interested in learning more about this from a scientific perspective, I invite you to look at the research of Dr. Rick Hansen, who talks about using your mind to change your brain, to change your mind. So, the research brings up things such as taking time to relive those good experiences, those memories, those good moments of your life, rather than allow yourself to replay the ones you didn't like, the bad ones. The research talks about writing gratitude lists and learning to cultivate a spirit of gratitude, and these are wonderful things to do. Research them, look into them. But I want to talk about a unity tradition, the foundation that underlies the unity movement, and that is the transformative power of affirmative prayer. And for those of you who had lead prayer chaplain will mention affirmative prayer on your bingo card, you can mark that space. So what is affirmative prayer? With affirmative prayer, we're not going to ask, we're not going to beseech, we are not going to beg, and we certainly are not going to bargain for our blessings. Instead, through affirmative prayer, we claim the goodness we already have. We claim the goodness that is being manifested in our lives even as we speak, even if we can't see it. We proclaim our goodness, we proclaim our wholeness, we proclaim ourselves as expressions of the divine. Now, Butterworth will tell you in here, in this chapter, that affirmative prayer is unlike what you've experienced prayer to be in other religious traditions. It's not going to be focused on praise and worship of something out there. It's not going to be based on rote memorization or doctrines or creeds. And it's not going to be aimed at pleasing some distant, separate God in the clouds. Affirmative prayer seeks to attune ourselves with God mind, with God consciousness, our consciousness with God consciousness, that which underlies and permeates all things. If God is omnipresent and omnipresence, if you believe that foundational creative energy that we call God is available in all things, then we affirm ourselves as expressions of the divine. So what I'm about to say is going to shock you. You might be wondering, well, who do I pray to if I'm not praying to a God out there? Where do I send my prayers? Where do they go? Butterworth says, quote, "Prayer then is not for God at all. It is for us. Startling as it may sound, it really doesn't make any difference to God whether or not we pray, but it makes a lot of difference to us. Prayer is not a matter of conquering God's reluctance, but of attuning ourselves to God's eternal willingness," end quote. It's about getting yourself in line with that yes creative energy. Now, Eric Butterworth wasn't the first to say this. In her book on healing letters, one of our co-founders of Unity, Myrtle Fillmore, made a similar observation about prayer, and it's one that my prayer chaplains really like. Quote, prayers aren't sent out at all. Sometimes that is our trouble. Where would we send our prayers? We should direct them to our minds, to our hearts, and affairs. Wow. It's about this. It's about going within. Jesus said, he who seeks, let him not cease seeking until he finds. And when he finds, he will be troubled. And when he is troubled, he will be amazed, and he will reign over the all. Jesus said, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in heaven, then the birds of heaven will go before you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will go before you. But the kingdom is within you, and it is outside of you. When you know yourself, then you will be known, and you will know that you are the sons of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you are in poverty, and you are poverty. Were you a little troubled by what was said here today? Were you a little excited by what was said here today? So, affirmative prayer. I'd like to leave you by talking just a little bit more about what that is and how you can practice that in your daily life. It's as simple as those I am statements that I spoke of in meditation. It's as simple as the I am statements that we say every Sunday as our prayer affirmation. Use those I am statements in your prayer practice, in your meditation practice at home, to affirm what you know to be true about you when you are connected, when you feel that connection to God mind. Avoid focusing on the appearance of lack and limitation. That's not what affirmative prayer is about. It's not about focusing our energy there. It's about focusing our energy on what we know to be true within. Release those old beliefs, that BS system you have. Rid your shoes of those annoying pebbles. And focus on what you are, an expression of God. So I leave you with this prayer. It's my own adaptation of the invocation written by Charles Fillmore. And you're welcome to close your eyes if you'd like to during this brief passage. I am one with infinite beingness. My spirit is filled with the divine aspects of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge my oneness with all that is, and I step forth in this power. Walking step in step with divine wisdom, I am aware of my infinite potential. I draw love from the divine wellspring within as I manifest my highest good according to the truth I know. And I send that out, not to God, but to the God in you. And so it is, and so I affirm it to be. Amen.
Melissa, thank you. Thank you so much. And to Rose, and to all of you, and the Unity, I always forget, Unity Singers, thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. And before we join together in our fellowship, food,